I actually think that this is kind of a historic entry point because all of the risk has been stripped off the asset. Like, you pretty much know Wall Street's going to embrace it, the U.S. government's going to embrace it, and banks in the U.S. going to embrace it, which means that all the other banks will embrace it. And we're in this macro risk-off zone. When that flips, I think Bitcoin will rip forward with a vengeance. Yeah, well, I think over the last decade, Bitcoin's had the best Sharpe ratio, and there's been tons of statistical studies that said if you put 1%, 2%, 3% in a portfolio, it improves the performance of the portfolio and improves the Sharpe ratio of the portfolio. It's kind of like sucralose. It's like this universal sweetener. It just makes everything sweeter. Bitcoin's been running about a 60 ARR, 60 vol for the past 4 to 8 years. I think that, ironically, most people don't want 60 ARR. They'd rather have 15 ARR, 15 vol. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for the highest performance asset, Bitcoin is it. And if you've got a diversified portfolio, it seems to me like you could put it into a bond portfolio, a stock portfolio, a real estate portfolio. It's only going to improve the performance and improve the Sharpe ratio.
These people are interested in it. It's down about 20%. It was 100,000. Now it's around 80,000. Just give us a high-level view of what's going on with Bitcoin itself right now.
All of the very important questions have been resolved to the satisfaction of the asset. The question is it a commodity or a security? That's really, really critical. The second question is there any other digital commodity? A third question is, how does the administration view it, right? There's always a question of, will it be copied, will it be banned, will it be hacked? So what we've seen over the past 12 months is we saw the spot ETFs approved. They were historically successful. Then we saw a red sweep. Now we see an administration where every single cabinet member is pro-Bitcoin. Every financial cabinet member, the head of the SEC, Treasury, and CFTC, pro-Bitcoin. And then the question is, will the administration be clear or ambiguous? Well, Trump created the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, very clear. And then he hosted the Digital Assets Summit Friday about a week and a half ago. And then that night, the crypto czar David Sachs went on television. And in an interview on television, he said that Bitcoin is the only crypto asset recognized as decentralized by the administration. Well, that's code word if you understand the law, understand securities law, understand finance. If that's the only asset decentralized, that means that the only crypto commodity recognized by the United States government and therefore by the entire financial establishment is Bitcoin. Ergo, Bitcoin has emerged as digital gold with the endorsement of the U.S. federal government, with the endorsement of Wall Street.
I want to hear more, but do you mean this to say that there is no other digital asset that we recognize as a commodity, not Ether, not anything else? Is that where you're going with this?
That's what I'm saying. And by the way, that's not what I'm saying. That's what David Sachs said on television. David Sachs reports to the President of the United States, and what he said was, this is the one we recognize as decentralized. Bitcoin is special. We're going to hold it forever. We're never going to sell it. Okay, that's clarity, right? If you're looking for the crypto gold or a digital gold or a digital capital asset that's a store of value, that's Bitcoin. I'll make one legal point.
Where does this leave the other crypto assets?
I'll lay that out too. The legal point is, it is illegal to capitalize a public company on a security. So you can only capitalize, but when I say capitalize, I mean if I have $1 billion of liquid assets, I can buy $1 billion of real estate, $1 billion of gold, $1 billion of soybeans, $1 billion of crude oil, or $1 billion of Bitcoin. I cannot buy $1 billion of Mag 7 stocks, $1 billion of Apple, $1 billion of the S&P index. And so the fact that Bitcoin is recognized as a commodity and the only crypto commodity it creates a very safe haven for any public company or public company investor looking for the winner. And what's the implication? It's this. The administration is very pro-digital assets. In my opinion, when the dust settles, there's going to be digital commodities, of which Bitcoin is the only universally acknowledged one. There may be some over the next decade. It'll be very hard to overcome that bar. And I think David Sachs said that as well. He said, it's possible that maybe we'll recognize another asset as decentralized. We don't right now. And there's maybe going to be half a dozen of those in the next 10 or 20 years. That's very rare. The second is a digital currency. That's a stable coin, and so the government's gonna pass. I think the Genius Act will be passed. The U.S. government will allow a U.S. regulated company or bank to issue a stable coin as long as it's backed by treasuries, by currency equivalents in a U.S. Regulated institution. The third asset will be digital securities. That's tokenized stocks and bonds. I think you'll have to be a regulated entity. BlackRock will issue digital securities. You'll get a digital share of Apple or a digital ETF. And they'll circulate 24/7, 365. And then the last will be a digital token. And a digital token will be the lowest threshold. Anybody can launch a token. It won't be a security. It will stop short in the utility that's deemed legally a security. Right now, the SEC is going through an elaborate set of meetings to determine what constitutes a security. Trump coin will not be a security. We know that. Sachs has even said that. It's likely going to end up being deemed a token. And I think if I'm in the crypto industry, the takeaway is the only thing where you've got regulatory clarity, if you're going to put $1 billion bet on right now, the only thing you would do is put $1 billion bet on Bitcoin as a long-term store of value. That is clear. The president said he wants the digital assets framework on his desk by August at the White House a week and a half ago. I think you will have clarity that will be passed into law and signed by the president sometime in 2025 that will create a very clear path for digital currency, digital tokens, and digital securities. They're coming. But right now, the real news of the past 2 weeks is there's one digital commodity endorsed by the U.S. federal government.
Can you give us some thoughts on what might happen in the next few months around Bitcoin, and to what extent is the current volatility overall in the markets affecting Bitcoin?
I think Bitcoin is the most useful financial asset in the world. On Twitter, or on X this weekend, the chatter was someone posted $10 million and took like a 40-to-1 leveraged short bet. And so where else can you actually get $500 million of credit by posting $10 million of collateral on the weekend? And so you have massive, massive leverage available, massive liquidity available. And whenever there's a macro theme, if people are wanting to be short risk assets or short anything, the one thing you can short 40-to-1 cross-collateralized by anything is Bitcoin. So it's going to be more it's going to be more volatile. But I actually think that this is kind of a historic entry point because all of the risk has been stripped off the asset. Like, you pretty much know Wall Street's going to embrace it, the U.S. government's going to embrace it, and banks in the U.S. going to embrace it, which means that all the other banks will embrace it. You already know all those things, and yet the market is really skittish based upon concerns about tariffs, the disposition of the U.S. economy, the interest rate forward graph. And so you see the interest rates have pulled in 30, 40, 50 basis points, and we're in this macro risk-off zone. When that flips, I think Bitcoin will rip forward with a vengeance. The only asset endorsed by a president of the United States in 50 years is Bitcoin. I mean, go back in the last 200 years in the history of the country. And I think if you go to the founding fathers, they wrote in the Constitution that money is silver and gold coin. And then at some point there was a chicken in every pot, and maybe with the founding of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we endorsed everybody to single-family home ownership. But in the 21st century, you have just one asset, Bitcoin. The president saying, don't sell your Bitcoin. Saying more than that, saying the United States won't sell its Bitcoin. And so everything else you put your client into, if the U.S. government seized any other security that you sold to a client, if they seized any collectible, any art, any real estate, they would sell it. The only thing that the U.S. government won't sell if they are to seize it is Bitcoin. And so what do I think about suitability? I think that you've got the president telling you, you've got David Sachs telling you, you've got Scott Bessent on television this weekend saying we're going to be the leader in digital assets. You've got the most successful ETF in the history of Wall Street, IBIT. You've got $140 billion of capital flowing into spot ETFs in 12 months. And you've got Bitcoin outperforming everything in everybody's portfolio. And you have the most successful commodity in the history of the world, right? Every other commodity, by the way, is a dog, right? You shouldn't be investing in soybeans or, holding natural gas or
Gold.
oil or gold or wheat or corn, because it's pretty obvious capital and know-how will produce infinite supply of that. Bitcoin's the only commodity with a hard cap of 21 million. And so on one hand, a commodity has so many legal advantages. You can market it, you can hold it, you can capitalize a country on it and a company on it. And so it's a big advantage to be a commodity over security, but the only commodity that's going to outperform the S&P index and the cost of capital is Bitcoin. And so right now, something nobody else knows. If you basically take advantage of that knowledge, I think you make your clients a lot of money.
And talk a little bit about strategy, about the company. And those who don't know, the name of the company was changed to Strategy in early 2025. You own what, 500,000 Bitcoin now? 500,000, right around there?
Just shy of 500,000, 499,200 and something.
So the math here is somewhere around, 80,000. So that's somewhere around $41 billion. So the market cap is what, $68 billion? Can you explain that differentiation there?
Microsoft trades at 20 times net assets. The answer is the operating company is actually producing shareholder value by using its net assets. So Strategy is producing shareholder value by using the Bitcoin and then creating a yield on the Bitcoin. So like last year, we raised $22 billion of capital. That $22 billion of capital was at a 200% premium to the underlying assets. We bought back $22 billion of Bitcoin. We captured about a $13 billion shareholder gain. We call that BTC gain. So if you had a company generating $13 billion a year in earnings, would you value it at something, right? Wouldn't you put a 10x multiple on it or something? So the truth is, the treasury operation of our business is probably, 3-4 multiple on the gain we had last year. So I think the company's misunderstood in that regard. We generated a 74% BTC yield last year. That means that you had 74% more Bitcoin per share at the end of the year than you have at the beginning of the year. So if you had put $1 million into a spot ETF, you would have paid a 20 basis point fee. Whereas if you put $1 million into our company, you would have paid no fee and had 1.74 million worth of Bitcoin by the end of the year.